Hi everybody, welcome back to Living Traditions Homestead. Well, last year about this time, when the harvest of the gardens started coming in, we all started panicking a little bit because we gardeners and homesteaders had a hard time finding jars in the grocery stores because there was an influx of people wanting to learn how to grow their own food, how to can their own food. So the demand for canning jars was really high and the supply didn't meet the need of the demand, so supplies were short. We all tried to be as creative as we could, trying to find canning jars at thrift stores, garage sales, rummage sales, auctions, those kinds of things, hoping that this whole issue would be resolved by this current harvest season. Everything would be fine. The manufacturer could catch up on producing jars and producing the lids that we need to can our harvests. Well, I think that overall the jars have made it back to the grocery stores and to the stores. I've been seeing jars for several months now. But what hasn't returned back to the store shelves are the canning lids, or the flats, as some people call them. I've actually been really worried about this since about December or January, because that's generally when I go to the store. Supplies are generally plentiful, and that's when I buy all of my canning lids for the next harvest season. Well, I didn't see any. I didn't see any in December. I didn't see any in January. I talked to people in the stores, employees and managers. They weren't able to get the canning lids, so I started contacting the canning lid companies and got responses back assuring me that by harvest season this year, the canning lids would be back on the shelves and everything would be fine. However, I continued to look. In March, no lids. April, no lids. May, no lids. June, no lids. So now we're in the middle of July and I've seen some lids trickling back into the grocery store, but like one box or two boxes here and there. Because our family grows and raises a lot of our own food. Like, we hope to produce most of our own food for an entire year here on this homestead. 1 or 2 boxes of canning lids is just not going to do it for us. We actually use over an entire case of canning lids, sometimes 2 cases of canning lids an entire year. So a couple months ago, I started looking into alternatives. What was I going to do? Am I going to not can this year? Am I going to reuse my old canning lids, which I've been saving for emergency use? Or is there a reusable option out there? Now, I have known for a couple of years that reusable canning lids exist. A couple of years ago, a subscriber of ours sent me a sample of Tattler reusable canning lids, and I never tried them out. I figured, I'm going to hold on to these for emergency situation, but I'm going to continue buying my disposable one-time use canning lids from the grocery store. But through all of that's happened over the last year, and the fact that canning lids are just really hard to find right now, I found myself getting kind of angry with myself and angry with Kevin and I that, we're living this lifestyle, growing as much of our own food as we possibly can to be more self-sufficient and to be less dependent on the grocery store. And here I am dependent on the grocery store and dependent on somebody else for a piece of what I need to preserve my family's food. That led me to thinking about and looking into the reusable canning lids again. So I dug out the Tattler lids that somebody bought me. I looked into them, I read about the website. So I decided to get a hold of the samples that I had been given from a subscriber and try them out to see if I liked them, and to see if that would make me want to purchase more so that I could just be a little bit more secure and feel a little bit more secure that I had what I needed on the homestead to preserve the harvest. When I tried them, I was a little nervous because some of the things are a little bit different the way that you can, but in the end, it was a very good experience. So I went ahead and made a purchase for Tattler lids. So today I want to talk with you about Tattler lids a little bit more, and I want to show you how to use them so that you can choose if you want to replace the disposable ones that you buy from the store, or if you're having a hard time finding them, you too can still harvest what you have in the garden for this year and then keep these for indefinite use in the future. So I just want to start off today showing you the Tattler lids in comparison to the standard lids that we've all been used to using, and just show you the difference of what they look like, and then we'll get into how to use these Tattler lids in comparison to how we are used to using the standard lids. So the standard lids, as you know, are a one-piece metal disposable canning lid that has like a rubber ring around here that is connected to this metal piece. The metal piece has like a pop-up bubble that actually gets sucked in when your canning is done to tell you that you've got a nice seal. So we're all used to seeing these, a nice place to write on these lids. Now the Tattler lids are a little bit different. They are a two-piece system here. This piece here is plastic. It is BPA-free plastic. And then there is a rubber seal here, two-piece system. The rubber seal, both of these are good indefinitely. You can use them over and over again. The two-piece system works like this. The rubber seal lays really nicely in this top here. It doesn't move around because there's a lip here you can see. It just sits and nests nicely down inside of there. And this is what you'll use to put on top of your canning lid like that. You'll use the ring, screw it down, and process it. There are a couple different things about these in the processing, so I'll make sure to show that to you. But I wanted to show you guys the difference between what we're all used to using and the Tattler reusable lids. Now these Tattler lids can be used for water bath canning and pressure canning. They are dishwasher safe. Both pieces are dishwasher safe. I don't have a dishwasher, so I have to hand wash mine. And made in the USA, like I said, they are, you can reuse them indefinitely as long as it doesn't have any rips in it or it's not showing wear and tear. If it is, just throw it out and then use a replacement rubber gasket. Now these Tattler lids, they are more expensive than the disposable ones. Just like plastic silverware is less expensive because you can just throw them away versus the metal silverware that you use at home. The metal silverware is more expensive. It holds up to time and wear and tear. So similar to these canning lids, they're going to be more expensive. But for me, it's worth the investment to know that I have these and that I can use them over and over again. There are a couple places that you can check these out. You can check them out in our Amazon shop and order through Amazon. Otherwise, you can order these directly from their website. It's called reusablecanninglids.com. They have a lot of options for bulk ordering, and obviously, like when you order anything else in bulk, the more that you order, the less they are per canning lid. So it depends on your budget, but there are two places that you can take a look at these. Okay, so today I'm going to show you how to use these new canning lids. They're really not new. They've been around for quite a while, but they're new to a lot of us because we just haven't been using them. I'm just going to do a really quick canning session today. I'm going to be making blackberry jelly, and the focus of this video is going to be on how to use these Tattler lids, not the intricacies of making jelly. I do have a specific jelly making video that takes you really step by step through the canning process. So if you're new to canning, make sure you check that out. It does use the more normal disposable lids. Just make sure to remember that when you're using the Tattler lids, some of the procedures are going to be just a little bit different. Okay, so let me get set up. We're going to start canning this jelly, and we're going to use these Tattler lids. I'm ready to start canning here. I like to get everything ready and out and in its place, so that when, especially jelly, because it goes so fast, so that when I'm ready to can, I have everything out here and I'm not missing anything. So before we get started, I want to just tell you that in all of this process, we need to put the gaskets on the lids themselves and put them in a pot. We're going to be pouring boiling water on top of these lids and gaskets that we have all set up right before we can, just to scald them. But I want to put these in there right now so that when I'm ready, I can just pour the water in there. So this assembly is something that's a little bit different than when you're canning with conventional canning lids. So we're just going to have those all set for us. I'm also all set up here to make my jelly. Water on the stove, my can, that's what I'm gonna use to can the jelly today. The water that I'm gonna scald the lids with. And I'm using today my favorite canning book of all time. I show this to you guys all the time. I put this in my Amazon shop. I love this and I talk about it all the time in my other canning videos. Okay, so we're just gonna get started making the jelly. I've got my jars heating up in the oven so that they're hot when I need them. And so we'll just quickly go through this recipe. Again, we are making blackberry jelly. We're starting off with 3.5 cups of blackberry juice. This juice is from the blackberries on our property, and I use a steam juicer to extract the juice. 3.5 cups. We're adding 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. 1 package or 6 tablespoons of pectin, powdered pectin. And we're gonna whisk that together until that pectin is dissolved very well. Now that it's mixed in, we're going to just turn up the heat. I'm gonna stir this until it comes to a boil, and at that point we'll put in our sugar. My berry juice is boiling. I think you can see that a little bit. So now we are going to add the sugar all at once. Stir that. That's 5 cups of sugar. Stir that in to dissolve all of that sugar. And we need to continue stirring until this gets up to a hard boil. You reach a hard boil when you're stirring and stirring and stirring and it's still boiling. You can't like stir the boil out of it essentially. So it'll take a while for all of this to melt, all the sugar to melt, and for the mixture, the jelly, to come up to a rolling hard boil. Well, you can probably see in the pot that this is boiling pretty well right now. This is what's considered a hard boil. So we're going to keep this at a hard boil, stirring this around for 1 minute. Well, we're almost set. I'm gonna grab this boiling water here. We're gonna put that water in here with our lids so that they can scald. We are ready to get started canning. With jelly, we're gonna fill up these little jelly jars until they are 1/4 inch from the top. We're gonna check our depth with this tool, this measuring tool. I call it a gapper, to measure the gap. I use a chopstick to swirl around in there, make sure there are no bubbles in there. Use a clean, wet towel to wipe off the rim. Now it's time for our Tattler lids. So I use a tongs and I grab it just like that, the gasket and the lid together. Flip it upside down on top of there. Hold it with 1 finger. Okay, here is one of the biggest differences between conventional lids and the Tattler lids. We need to put these lids on here, but we can't tighten them too much. When you're canning with conventional lids, you tighten it to what they call finger tight. Well, that's too tight for Tattler lids. It still needs to be a little bit loose so that the pressure can come out and your jars don't explode in the canning process. So on their website, they suggest that you put 1 finger on top of your canning lid, screw on your band until the jar starts to twist on the counter. And that is as tight as you want them. put it in your canning pot. Now be careful and make sure that you're grabbing the jar by the jar, not by the band, okay? We're gonna put this in our canning pot. Now I'm gonna do this again, but I'm gonna show it to you closer up so you can really see what to do. Okay, the last jar is going in. We're gonna cover that and turn that on. We're gonna bring that to a boil. Once it is boiling, I'm gonna set a timer for 15 minutes for this to process. Because of our altitude, we need to process 5 minutes longer than the directions call for. So the standard directions say process for 10 minutes. I'll be processing for 15. One thing that I like to do when I'm canning, either pressure canning or water bath canning like this, is once the pot of water comes up to a really hard boil, I actually turn the heat down quite a bit so that it's still boiling inside, but it's not boiling so hard that it heats up the contents of the jars so hot that they boil over. Turning the heat down also prevents the contents of those jars from siphoning out when you take them out of the pot and put them on the counter. Siphoning normally happens when the contents are so hot and there's a quick change in temperature and it forces the liquid contents to rush out of the top. The boiling over of contents when it's inside the canner or siphoning out when you take them out of the canner, that can compromise the seal, either on conventional canning lids or on these Tattler canning lids. So that is one thing that I do really pay attention to when I'm canning, is turning down the heat once it comes up to a boil so the contents in the jars don't get just so hot that it compromises those seals. Our timer has gone off. I'm going to turn off the heat. I'm going to take the lid off. And I'm gonna wait 5 minutes before I take these out of the pot. I think that's another really important step to prevent your contents from siphoning out of your jars. There is one more big difference between conventional canning lids and these Tattler lids. I need to show you, but first I need to get them out of the canning pot. There's one more step with these Tattler lids, and that is to tighten the bands on all of these jars, but we can't do it right away. There is still pressure and air escaping from inside of here because the contents really are still boiling. So we need to wait, set a timer for 4 to 5 minutes, and then we're gonna come back and carefully, with a towel, we're carefully going to screw these bands down tight to create that important seal. We've waited long enough, so we're gonna screw these down. I'm just gonna, with the towel, grab the jar and tighten that band nice and snug. Now that these are tightened down, with conventional lids, we listen for the ping of that seal being created, but these aren't going to make that sound. It's one thing that is kind of our reward for our hard work, is to hear that sound, but it's not going to happen with the Tattler lids. What we need to do is we need to wait until these are completely cooled down, either 12 to up to 24 hours. We need to wait to make sure these are completely cooled. And then we're going to test if the seals are good. A couple days ago, I canned some blackberries, just blackberries in a light syrup. They're in here, and I used my Tattler lids. So I want to show you with this jar what we will be doing with these jelly jars tomorrow morning to check to see if their seals are good. So tomorrow morning, we are going to take off the band. And we are going to carefully hold on to the plastic lid, and we're going to pick the jar up by the lid. If the lid stays on and it doesn't come off of the jar, the seal is good. And the last thing that's just a little bit different about the Tattler lids is it's a little bit more difficult to write on them. Now I have found a way, and I know that that marker will come off when I scrub it, even if I need to use a little bit of rubbing alcohol, but that's a little bit different. And maybe I just need to experiment with some of those dissolvable labels that you could put on there. But overall, you guys, I am so pleased, and I'm actually relieved to have these reusable canning lids. I can reuse these indefinitely as long as the gaskets remain good. And I'm just so excited to also now be a little bit more independent of the grocery store. You guys, I hope you learned something today. I hope that maybe I put you guys at ease a little bit, that if you're feeling a little bit anxious about whether or not you can get canning lids this year, or if this is just going to continue happening in the future, know that there's an alternative, and that is the reusable canning lids from Tattler, and I am loving them a whole bunch. So this is a message that needs to be shared with other canners and other people who are worried about whether or not they're going to be able to can their harvest this summer. So make sure that you share this on your social media to get the word out that there is an alternative to those conventional disposable canning lids. Hey, if you're enjoying this video, make sure that you give it a thumbs up and make sure that you subscribe so that you're notified of all of our new videos. And until next time, thank you so much for stopping by our homestead. Take care and God bless.